welcome. So we're going to look today at what I understand about quantum. Okay, I remember a physicist said to me very recently when I used the word quantum, he said, you shouldn't use that word. Nobody knows what it means. And I thought, okay, I'm going to go find out what it means for myself. And as long as I define it for myself, then we're good to go. So it's a word that is bandied about a lot at the moment, particularly in the very alternative healing field, quantum healing. But first we're going to look at sort of where we've come from and what we may still believe. So we've come from a very mechanical and linear model of cause and effect, which is based on, we've got a line based on past experiences and mental reasoning, and that if you do X, you're going to get Y, and it just goes in this linear line. And we've been brought up to believe in linear time, which is based on continuous movement, like a pendulum, or a sundial, or a water flowing at a constant speed. And we're also, one of the common phrases at the moment is victim consciousness. And this is because we've been told that once, we are the way that we are, that we're always going to be the same, and we're always going to get the same. And that puts us in a bit of a victim mode, like we have no control, we have no choice. And we know that when we're in that state, I suspect a lot of you have heard about the law of attraction, that we attract the state that we're in. So if we're in quite a low vibrational state, like being in a victim state, then that's what we're going to attract to us, and it will keep reinforcing our belief in ourselves. But imagine that if you were able to, when you've got a problem in front of you, you were just able to have multiple options. I mean, even infinite number of choices, and that time was not linear. You could move through time, you could flow through time, and it could be either like stretched or it could be compacted. And that you can actually choose who you want to be and how you live, how you are, that you can choose that it's not dependent on your past. And I believe that to get from that quite linear line, that linear view of life, cause and effect, to this more expanded sense of the universe, is that if we understand quantum reality, that's going to help us make that transition. So this is a bit of a busy slide. I'll just read it out. They're not all like this. So what quantum means, if you look up the definition, is the very smallest unit of anything. So like the smallest unit of light is a photon, or the smallest unit of electricity is an electron. And quantum physics, which is what Einstein was really involved in, is about the behavior of matter inside atoms. So, we already believe that atoms, are like the smallest unit, but this is about the behavior inside the atom. And this bears no relation to what was called Newtonian physics, where it was very much cause and effect. If you dropped an apple, it would fall. You knew what would happen. The quantum field is sort of like a fluid, like sometimes it's being called plasma, that permeates everything. If you think about, the fact we talk about the energy, everything is just one energy. And that's like the quantum field, and it can act like as a wave or as a particle, but we'll go into that more later on. So quantum thinking is about the ability to hold multiple thoughts simultaneously and that, so that you can actually put the right action in at the best time. Quantum healing, which a lot of you will now have heard about, is about consciously interacting with the quantum field in order to shape our reality, and through the ripple effect we then shape universal reality. So why is it important to understand about quantum reality? Well, we're starting to realize that we live in a multi-dimensional universe. Even the physicists will now say that beyond our actually planet, that time warps and that the universe possibly warps. It's not a direct linear process. We also, because we want to be free, most of the people that I work with, this is their core value, is freedom. And freedom operates at so many levels. It's not just about like being able to go traveling or something like that. It's about being free of mental constructs, free of all the mental programming that we've had during our lives, so that we can see it and understand it and make a choice as to how we really want to think. Because obviously, law of attraction, the way we think, is because we want to choose our reality. And for most of us, we also want to co-create with the universe. And we need to be in the quantum field in order to do this as effectively as we can. And why is it important now? Well, we're experiencing a huge amount of chaos, as most people keep feeding back to me. When's the astrology going to change? We all learned a lot during lockdown, and I can sort of feel that we're on this border of, maybe losing some of what we learned and not carrying it forward. Most of us want to know why that we're here, because we want to be of service to others. And also because we know that Pluto is on the cusp of moving into Aquarius. And we're going to be getting a whole new planetary era, whole new planetary consciousness. And Aquarius is all about freedom. So it's sort of pertinent that we're wanting to look at how we can actually be freer in ourselves. So why would you listen to an astrologer? I'm an astrologer, for those of you who don't know me. The thing about astrology is that although it's a language that offers a huge variety of choice in terms of its interpretation. So everything in astrology can work on what I call a spectrum. It can work at a very unconscious level, or it can work at a very super conscious level. And the beauty about a birth chart is that it's a very quick and easy way of seeing where you are now and looking at where do you want to go. So it's a very easy way of finding out where you're still operating at a limiting level, if you like, in a level that is not giving you the freedom you want. And so this is an example of an astrological birth chart. It's actually mine. And this is the wheel of the zodiac that goes around our solar system. And these are the little symbols of the planets. So it's basically a map showing where the planets were at the time I was born. And the map works by changing the meaning of what we learned previously, prior to the moment that you came and had your chart looked at. But most of it we have picked up very, very young. In fact, up until the age of 7, we lived in a fantasy world. A child up to the age of 7 doesn't know the difference between their imaginal world and the real world. And they're actually able to bend reality through their imagination. Now, we were all children once. We all had this ability to manifest. I'm sure that you can think of examples as a child where you really wanted something and it came, and because children's intention and focus is very, very pure. But then around the age of 7, Saturn does its first square, and it's almost like we land on Earth with a bump, and we start to learn things in a different way, and we start becoming a slightly different person to what we were. And, you know, it can go either way. We can, you know, be the sort of child who is made to keep their head down and has to work really hard and doesn't get to play out, or we can be children who are really, really free and have lots and lots of space to imagine still and create just. And it's up until about the age of 7 or 8 that we're creating our values, and through these, our adult identity. But what happens is that for most people, that wild, magical child that they were up until about the age of 7 becomes locked away. And we're even taught to fear life itself. Now, this is something that everybody goes through. I know very, very few children who have not had this happen to them in so overtly, and usually because they've been home educated by very enlightened parents. So I just thought I'd do a little run through of the sort of things that we were conditioned to fear over the last 50 years. So in the 60s, we were taught to fear the communists. And in the 70s, we were taught to fear nuclear war. And in the 80s, we were taught to fear HIV and sex. And then in the 90s, we were taught to fear the ozone layer, the hole in the ozone layer, and it was going to fry us all up. And then in the noughties, we were taught to fear people of other races, particularly of Islam. And then in the last 10 years, we've been taught to fear migrants, for example. So I was visiting a primary school recently, and they had a whole song they were singing about that the planet is dying, and they would go off in a spaceship somewhere. And some of them have been taught, well, they're all being taught that they may have been born in the wrong body. They're all being taught now about transgenderism up and even in primary. My friend's daughter is 8 and she's been taught about this. And so what happens is that these fears become, it's not so much they become embedded in our DNA, and I use that because it was just a shorter way of saying it, but they're encoded in our DNA. And due to stress hormones, so particularly things like cortisol, and we can switch them off and we can switch on other genes which would be more life enhancing, but because of the way we've been brought up, those are now switched off, but they're all present. And this is called the science of epigenetics, and I touched on this in my last masterclass. But what happens is that when we've been very conditioned and very programmed with a lot of fears, is that you know, we see this all the time, that I see it, you know, that modern humans, they tend to wear uniforms, and they you know, everybody tends to look very similar and follow the same patterns, follow the same routines, work in very minimalist spaces. Whereas really humans are meant to be wild, they're meant to be, and you know, like working with their hands and out in nature. Modern food is grown in, you know, these very linear patterns. Everything becomes very linear. Whereas wild food is much more random, it's much more mixed, and we get a lot more variety in this way. The food, the plants cooperate with each other and they support each other. So one of the things that I found is that a lot of people I work with is this thing about that we need to be in control of some aspect of our world. And it can be different things, but often it's within relationships where I've got a friend who, she just had to be in control of the people who were working with her. And when they didn't do what she wanted them to do, she would just get so uptight and so irate. And then she became a victim, because obviously they didn't want to work with her when she was being like that. And then as far as she was concerned, it was all their fault. And, you know, we just end up in these vicious cycles of where we keep creating what it is that we don't want. So we need to let go of these areas of where we're wanting to stay in control. And as I said, go quantum. So I need to explain a little bit of physics first. I suspect a lot of you have heard about the double slit experiment that was done a long time ago now. And what they did was they shot light photons at 2 slits in I don't know, a piece of card or a piece of metal or whatever. And they found that when they were observing the experiment, they would end up with 2 lines, because the electrons would go straight through the slits and land on the screen on the other end as 2 lines. But when they weren't observing, they got a much more random pattern, which signified that actually there were no particles, that actually these photons were coming through as waves, not as particles. And so what it is that when we're too focused on something, then all we can see is this linear projection, this linear forward movement. And this is very left brain, which most of us, that's how we've been taught in education, is to be quite left brain. Whereas really what we want to do is to surrender more to the waves of energy that we have available to us. And we also need to understand about our electromagnetic field. So you probably all know that as humans, we have electromagnetic fields. And here we're particularly looking at the field in the heart, and it's called the toroidal field. You may have come across this before, where the energy just keeps rolling out like this, like around a donut, and it can get bigger and bigger depending on how you know, high vibration we can achieve in terms of how big our toroidal field can be. And this toroidal field, the electromagnetism from the heart, is much greater than it is from our brain. In fact, our brain is more under the control of our heart. The brain operates very much in linear thinking, linear space, linear time, but the heart operates in the quantum field. We're really wanting to move away from this sort of quite head-centric way of operating in the world and dropping down more into our hearts, because everything emanates from our state of being. Law of attraction. And the easiest thing that we can bring ourselves to if we're feeling distressed or in a difficult situation with somebody else is to move into compassion and forgiveness, if we can achieve that. Because as soon as we move into compassion, then we increase the electromagnetic vibration from our hearts automatically. And most of us can do appreciate the quality of compassion and can generate that to some extent. So I want you to do a little exercise now. If you've got a pen and paper, or just type it in your phone or something, I want you to write down 3 things about yourself that you know. I am. And then I want you to write down 3 things that you would choose to be. I'm going to give you 6 simple recommendations of how you can move more into the quantum field, how you can operate more in the quantum field. Some of these things I've been through before in other masterclasses. But one of the first things is choosing to be in the highest energetic place that we can be. Choose how to get our electromagnetic frequency to the highest vibration that we can. But it's very much to do with the state that we can find ourselves in. And we want to be able to talk about the past, the present, and the future from a place of the highest, the biggest, the best energetic field that we can create. Because as we know from the law of attraction, it's our energy field. The way that it vibrates is how we create. And, I wanted to think about, what does high vibe mean to you? And I was thinking about these 2 people, Anne Frank and Nelson Mandela, because they were both imprisoned for many, many years. And yet, if you've ever read Anne Frank's book, she was able to discover and move into an incredible experience of freedom with even within her imprisonment. And Nelson Mandela used to say the same. They can imprison me, but they can't imprison my mind. They can't imprison my state of being. So that I did this masterclass recently, 6 top tips to raise your vibration. And I won't go through all those now. But if you think, but it's sort of based on the fact, that we've got the sand on the beach, which is very dense and quite heavy and slow energy. And then you've got the ocean, which is much faster energy, but the molecules are still staying together, but it's just fluid. And then we've got the air, which is a much faster energy, so that the molecules can actually escape from each other. So the next thing we're going to look at is timeless. Now, I've done a lot of work with how to live within and without time, because time is a man-made construct and it's very linear. And because most of us have watches or phones or clocks on the wall or whatever, and we have deadlines and we have appointments and we have to be at work on time and we leave on time, we get our lunch break on time. It's like our whole lives become dictated by linear clock time. And this is very new. It's only in the past 150 years that people have been so dictated by clock time. Up until then, it came about with the advent of the railways, because they needed to make sure all the connections joined up. Prior to that, 2 cities near each other, they got a completely different clock times going on. We already said about linear time. Now, all of our mechanical devices, all of our electronic devices, everything has to operate on linear time. It has to operate on this pendulum swing, this digital timekeeper. But in reality, we live in what's called cosmic time, where within the actual universe, time is much more fluid. It bends more. And you see, this is a very old clock. I think it's something like 13th century. And you can see it's got all the symbols of the zodiac around it. And as the planets move around the sun in our solar system, they are forever creating new patterns that are not then repeated again, that, you know, and this is what we might call clock time, this constant motion of the different speeds of the planets going around the sun. And then we also have seasonal time, which or natural time, which, you know, govern the seasons and the planting by the moon and things like that. But imagine that if time was like, if you can see in this structure, it was in layers, and you could jump between these layers. You could be in one layer, and then you could jump to another layer, and then you could jump back to another layer, and you could move through these different layers. And this is moving, I feel, this is like moving in the quantum field. And what we end up with is a very multi-dimensional experience of time. But the way that you get there is you have to stop using it. You have to stop using linear clock time and operate, you know, it's nighttime, or I'll go to bed, or it's daytime, I'll get up, or I'm hungry, I'll eat now, or I feel to do this, I'm going to do this now, which is very, very different to the way that we've all been brought up. And then the next couple of things I want to look at is play and creativity. And both of these require that timelessness. I'm not talking about the sort of play that, you know, you go and play sports at the gym, or you play a board game. I'm talking about the sort of play that children do, where they go into their imaginal realm. So my friend here, her daughter bought some slime. Apparently it's one of these new sensory sort of toys that a lot of children are using to help calm them down. And she was watching a video of a child playing with slime, and all you saw with the hands just pulling this slime and rolling this slime about. And as the child was playing with it, they were telling a story. They were imagining a conversation with somebody. They were creating shapes, and this was so and so, and then rolled it up, and this was so and so. And as they played with it, they were creating a story. And that's the sort of imaginal realm that we're looking at, where we just move into a different place where we can access ideas and stories in the way that children do, up until mostly until about the age of 7. But in order to do this, we need to have certain qualities. We have to be very vulnerable, because one of the things about, you know, as we get older, and particularly, you know, when children move into their teens, they start to become quite self-conscious, and they don't want to appear silly. They don't want to appear, you know, a bit mad or anything. And so we all hold back, and we prevent ourselves from just letting go into play and spontaneity. So we have to learn to be more vulnerable. We also need to learn to be curious. As adults, during school, we weren't encouraged to be curious. We were just given facts and figures. We weren't asked to go and investigate something for ourselves and find out for ourselves. And we also obviously need to be able to imagine. We need to have a sense of wonder, you know, that when we can go out and see something beautiful, that we can go, wow, that we can go out to nature and just go, wow, that is so beautiful. And this is something, you know, that's really good to practice all the time, that sense of wonder, because that is it automatically moves us into a more quantum experience of reality. And then creativity. There's not many of us who really fully express our creativity. You know, we might sit and do a bit of knitting, or you know, something little like do some gardening or something, but there's not very many of us who really explore what it is that we absolutely love to do and give ourselves a big portion of our days, of our weeks, to that activity in order purely to create, purely to draw down those ideas from the imaginal realm and bring them into some sort of material manifestation. And when we move into that creative space, I'm sure you've all experienced it, is you lose track of time. You don't know, and you forget to eat and you forget to drink. And then you go, oh, gosh, look at that. I've been at this for ages. But you've been completely lost in there. And so in order to move into that creative space, we need to be free. We need to give ourselves that space to have that freedom to move into it, and to allow ourselves to explore whatever it is that we absolutely love to do. We need to lose ourself, that sense of ourself, and oh no, that's not good enough, and you just let it go, and you let go of time, and you follow your passion. Just follow your heart. Now, one of the things that I am really passionate about is expression through dance, singing, music, drumming. And this is a brilliant way of moving into the quantum reality if you can improvise. It doesn't work so well if you're like reading music, because that's still all got that linear time aspect to it. So this is about freestyling. This is about, you know, really being vulnerable and letting go of those inhibitions and just letting it out. You know, that expression, dance as if nobody's looking, sing as if no one is listening. And it's something that is very rarely seen now in our modern culture. You might see the odd busker really going for it, but in general, people are quite controlled in their spontaneous creativity. And yet, if you think about it, human beings dancing and singing and drumming were a very, very, very primal activities that human beings used to participate in, and they probably even predated speech. And for them, this was their way of channeling spiritual energy, channeling source energy. And when we can let go into that very freestyling of, and it can be music, it can be speech, whatever it is that is just a creative expression, when we can really let go and completely freestyle and just allow whatever comes through, just do it, just be it, express it, then you're really moving into the quantum field. And you'll find yourself saying things or moving in a way or doing musical things, and you'll go, whoa, where did that come from? But we have to be able to let go in order to do those. So then there's two more states that I believe can help us move more into that quantum reality. And these are two that I learned many, many, many years ago as two spiritual paths that certain groups of Native Americans use. And one is the path of beauty. And if we take time to really appreciate beauty and to allow it to change our state, because beauty can do this quite easily. So we can watch a bird flying and we can feel the movement of that bird. It's changing our state. We can look at a beautiful flower and just move our awareness to the color and the shape and the vibrancy, and immediately we have changed our state into a much more expansive, what we might now call a quantum state. And the other path is the path of gratitude. Now, I know that lots of people do like gratitude journals where they sit and say, you know, what they're grateful for throughout the day. But being in a state of gratitude is more than expressing gratitude. Being in a state of gratitude, it almost doesn't even need you to say thank you. In fact, a beautiful musician I know called Brian Boothby, he sings a song called Give Love for Life. And if you think about it, if we're always giving love because of this life that we have been given ourselves, then we are automatically in a state of gratitude because we are expressing our love. And that, for me, is like a state of gratitude. And you're free to be who you want to be. You know, so much of our list, if you made a long list of I am, you'll find that so much of it was things that we were told. So, for example, the first thing we're told is whether we're a boy or a girl. And then we're given a name and we're told that's our name. And then as we go through life, we're told lots of other things about ourselves. Maybe you're clever, or you're stupid, or you're beautiful, or you're ugly, or, you know, you're a nuisance, or you're so helpful. We're just told endless things about ourselves, which we come to take on as our self-identity. But they're all things we've been told. Are they really us? I'd like to now write down 3 more things for I am, things that you would really love to say about yourself, that maybe secretly you've always wondered whether you might be, or that, you know, you can remember as a child. So much of what I do as an astrologer is look back at who we were as children. What were we interested in? What were we passionate about? What can we resurrect? What can we bring back? What have we ignored? What have we left behind? And so much of it belongs to that magical child that we once were, that magical child that was naturally lived in a quantum reality. Children don't know how to tell the time. They don't understand. And we naturally lived there. So write down 3 more things about something that you think, actually, I could change this about myself and I could take on a new identity. And then when you have a challenge, so for example, I'm here at my friend's and she has one of those pull-up things on the door frame, but her daughter keeps swinging on it and it's starting to dislodge the door frame. So she keeps saying to her child, don't swing on there. And gets really irate, but the child keeps doing it. So I said, look, it's obviously really important for her to hang. She obviously loves it. She loves hanging. She loves swinging. So instead, ask the universe, how can I provide this experience for my child? And then just leave it. Ask that question and just send it out, and maintain yourself in a state of whatever works for you. Beauty, gratitude, just smiling is one of my 6 top tips. Just smile. Whatever it is where you can increase the vibration that you are putting out, and the answer will come to you. You don't have to spend ages thinking about things. If you ask the question, the right question with focus and intention, the answer will come to you out of the quantum field. And I was listening to a song today. I don't know if you know her. She's called Alexia Chellam. And she sings about that the power of love is here now. The power of now is here now. And the power of you and me is here to create magic on earth. And I feel really strongly, I'm sure you all experience this, you will have all experienced this, that sometimes you just think, whoa, that was magic. How did that happen? That was amazing. And often it's because you've allowed yourself to surrender into the quantum reality, into the quantum field. You've not tried to control it yourself. You've let go and experience magic. And when we let go into that quantum field, we experience magic all the time. So thank you very much. And there's my email address if you want to contact me.